Okay, we are live. So, hi everyone, and welcome to the first Chaos Walking live show. We are discussing The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. And how we're going to do this is we're going to start with the spoiler-free section. So, if you haven't read the book yet, you can join in on this bit, and then we'll go into the spoiler section. Sorry. So, let's get started. So, starting with the spoiler-free section. So, how about if everybody introduces themselves and says what they rated the book and what they generally thought of it? So, Abby, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I am Abby from Abbey of Pelennor. I gave this book 4 stars, and everyone else seemed to enjoy it a little more than I did, and seemed to be a bit more emotionally impacted than I was. But it was still a very good book and a very quick read. Like, I know it's YA, but even then, and I know I read quickly, shut up, Hannah. But
that's not why I'm laughing. I promise that's not why I'm laughing. The bit that got me was that, and everyone else seems more emotionally impacted. And what I love is, I was literally sitting here thinking, yeah, I'm going to have to mention that I cried, aren't I? Like, immediately. And it was just the way you were like, and unlike everyone else, I didn't have a breakdown because of this book, was what I had. So good for you, Abby. Proud of you.
I am emotionally stunted.
Emotionally stable, unlike some of us.
I'm sorry, that is the first time in 28 years of existence someone has called me emotionally stable.
Everything's relative, Abby.
Everything's I think that's my Chris that, and he's going to say, has she gone insane?
No.
I mean, the way you said that, it sounded like you were insulted that someone called you mentally stable.
Like, how dare you?
In this economy? It's very inaccurate.
Who can afford to be stable in this economy?
You're basically calling her a Tory at this point. They're like the only ones that are stable.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you are.
Now I'm more offended at Hannah's statement. Take it.
No, as in like they're the only ones that can afford to be stable. I was agreeing with that bit. As if, come on.
Hannah,
if anyone spent more than 2 minutes to Abby, that is not even in question.
Abby's gone. Abby's done.
I was like, I've had enough.
Decided to turn off the camera. I didn't turn it off.
It was so offended for you.
She was like, no Tories in this house.
You know what you said about staying on track?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, already.
That's never going to happen with us, is it? It's never.
But chaos walking, read along.
Yeah.
To try and get back on some level of track, to summarize, I gave this 4 stars, and I enjoyed it. It could have been a 3.75, but I just chose to round it to 4 because it was very quick to read, and I appreciate that in a book. I think for me, it's not always well written, but when something is well written and quick, I personally very much appreciate it, and this one was both.
Okay, then Emma, what did you think?
So, first of all, I'm Emma from a completely dead channel, so don't bother. Don't worry about that. Come to TikTok. I'm over there now. I've got 2 accounts on there now. I've got multiple accounts on there now. Anyway, find me if you want. I'm the same as Abby. So 3.75 kind of rounded up to a 4. It was quick. It was fine. I had a moment last night. My mum was leaving my house and I was like, oh no, she just arrived with my dinner. And I was trying to get to like a chapter and then a certain thing happened. And I was like, oh, this just happened. But I was fine. I'm also emotionally stunted at this point. Like,
but neither of us are Tories, so at least there's that.
There is that.
That's how low the bar is, guys.
that's
we feel nothing anymore, but politics. We're on our A game.
Really affected by the state of the universe these days. We're good people.
Moving on.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, so I had to give it 5 stars because I cried. I feel like logically and like from a writer's perspective, I had some things that would have brought it down otherwise. And like in hindsight, there are definitely things that I like would have changed or didn't enjoy as much or could have been developed a whole lot more. But my rule is if I audibly laugh or if I cry, 5 stars. You made me feel something. And this book, it's all right that you guys were like, felt nothing. I felt it enough for all 4 of us. And I was the reason I was scrolling just now is because I was looking to see when the last time the 4 of us were on a live show. Because we'd mentioned in the group chat that we'd all done the Skullduggery read along together. Except Emma dipped before Abby could join. So this is technically our first read-along together, even though we've all done the same read-along before. And I really enjoy that as well. I thought I'd just bring that up.
Also, I remember, so we have a chat for the book, and just to show how emotionally dead, I was just reading along, and I was like, I was like, oh, that's sad, and then kept reading, and then we got a message in the chat from Hannah, which essentially was like, where the fuck were the trigger warnings?
It was literally like in my head.
I was like, I didn't even open
like it was just so much, like all of the emotion at once.
I didn't even open it. I just saw the notification and I went, oh, she's at that chapter.
Wow.
See, I don't even know if I'd started reading it at that point. And when I got to the first one, which was the bit that you were like really hard on, like I'm assuming it's the thing I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
You were so like, oh my God. And I was like, I got to the chapter and I was like, okay, and maybe it's because I was prepared, but I sort of got to it and I thought what happened later was going to happen then, and it didn't. And I was like, oh, well, it's fine.
Do you know what it was? We cannot discuss any of that without moving on to the spoiler section. Yeah. But I will say that the reason it triggered me so much has nothing to do with the book whatsoever, and everything to do with my own personal experience. So yeah, we will get to it.
Yeah, I can only apologise for not putting the trigger warnings in. Lesson learned. I will be looking up the other two just in case.
You know what? I should have known, because like I literally, when I was setting up my TBR, and I'm really disappointed that I didn't actually get to share my TBR. So I filmed my TBR that had Chaos Walking in it, and I mentioned it, and I like really hound up how excited for this I was, and the fact that this was one of 6 books that was this chunky as well. I was like, I know I am making a mistake picking such chunky books for Feb, but I then, as I was editing it, was like, girl, you look unwell. Are you okay? And then was immediately hit with burnout and the flu. And was like, oh, I really was unwell. So like, I was like, I never shared it. But one of the things that I said is I've only ever read one book by Patrick Ness, and it's When a Monster Calls. And I didn't the book itself didn't affect me massively. And then I went and saw the film, and I like wept the entire time. And Abby will appreciate this. When I went with someone that I work with. I came out and she was like, yeah, it's a good film, but like fine, like living their life. Whereas I came out being like, she was like, can you just for 5 minutes? And I was like, no, I cannot. If I could, you'd know about it. But alas, this is constant. This is 24/7 in my brain.
Can I just ask, Hannah, are you like
tidying up as I go? So like, we had McDonald's yesterday, and I just keep moving things. I'm really bad for it. Like any live show, there's things. I've got 2 bits of washi tape that I've been fiddling with this whole time. We've got Zach's little like Lego Tajimaka, and I just keep picking things up.
I've got a doll.
I'm having feelings, and then I start gesturing.
It was the metaphor of clutching at straws that came into my head, and it made me cackle.
Do you know what it was? Is I was like, I'm really bad for like, I need to be fiddling with things, especially if I start talking about stuff that like emotionally is quite a lot for me, because otherwise I will cry. And then I caught sight of this, like as I lifted it, and I went,
the comfort.
I just slowly put it down. No one will notice that I
noticed.
I mean, at first I mistook it just for a split second as an egg carton, and I was like, "What? Are you trying to flex on any Americans watching?" Like, oh, we have
it's just a spoon. No, it's the little cuppy holder. What's really funny is the only reason I have this. Obviously had Mackey's. The woman yesterday at the drive-thru handed me my drink, then handed me Zach's drink, and I went, can I have one of those? And I couldn't remember the word cup holder, so I just went, thingies? And then Zach went, she means cup holder. And I was like, thank you. So she handed me the cup holder, and Zach didn't put his drink in a cup holder because he could drink it, he wasn't driving, and it has sat on my desk ever since. So if you ever need to know, it's one of these thingies.
Oh yes, I'm sure I'll drive down to where you live rather than going to a local takeaway place.
Honestly. Oh, my family laugh at me all the time. I've got 2 degrees in words and I can't remember things like cup holder.
At least I have an excuse. You really don't.
I don't. I have 0 excuses. None. Nada. Nothing. This is just who she is as a person. No excuse.
You're an author. You're an author who has previously taught English.
Abby.
And has books out in the world.
Yeah, I do, yeah. And every now and then I'll have to Google thing you put cup in so that I can remember what the word is.
I'm gonna die.
Like, part of my master's degree was licking rocks. So I feel like I can do this.
I love it.
That's isn't it to tell if it's bone or rock?
No.
Oh,
You do that also in archaeology. If you lick a bone, it's porous and your tongue will stick to it. In geology, there are a few different things, but the main primary one is if something is salty, and it helps you narrow down the identification possibilities. So, and I did
saltiness. The bone thing is new to me, but as someone writing a murder mystery, saving for later.
Did you need to like get vaccinations before taking on this degree? Because I'm concerned.
Get some boosters.
No, surprisingly, but one of my friends that I'm still very close with, I did a geography undergrad, and then this more geology-based postgrad. And she was like, "You've never licked a rock before," and so she made me lick a rock when we were in Sicily.
I'm just having flashbacks to that QI episode where they made them lick rocks.
No, also, I feel like I should expand. This is not like right. Hi,
This is not just any rock. This is an M&S rock.
Like, it's not a jar of rocks.
I've got a jar of rocks.
Oh, fuck that.
When I say that she got me to lick a rock, I don't want to lick this because I know what it is and it will be nasty. But I don't mean that I did this. I mean that it was a great big slab of basalt attached to the mainland of Sicily that just had quite a like steep encampment bit, and she was like, "Lick it." So I basically licked a wall.
I feel like a lot of people have done that at Stonehenge. I feel like like people go to Stonehenge and they're like, "I want to touch it. It's mythical," and I'm like, someone will have licked that, and therefore I don't want to touch it.
This is from Mama Etna. I have another jar from Vesuvio.
I love that for you.
I love it.
Should we get back on track again?
Yeah, let's go back to that thing that Becca's hosting really well, and I'm so sorry that my personality is what it is.
I mean, listen, I'm just glad it's not me for once.
To be honest, this is the most I've laughed all year. This is what I need.
I was literally
You're
just
so
thinking,
welcome.
I literally had the thought, I now understand how I got through lockdown, and it was the live shows.
Yeah, it was us reading, and then like for 3 hours just this, and then being like, we should probably do some more reading, shouldn't we?
That's how we got on from reading to Ali's toy box at one point. I remember that stuck in my head, but we're going to move on from that.
Yeah,
I still remember when Hannah changed all of our names on it to say each one to it was a quote that one of us had said. I still got that screenshot. By the way, I still have that screenshot.
Oh, good. I love that.
I may send it to you later for the memories. But anyway.
Please, I can't even remember what the quotes were.
I don't know what it says there, but a new one.
What?
Oh, you can't see it all, but it says Emma the Danger novella.
Yeah, the danger. Maybe I'm the danger.
What if I'm the danger? It's a daily question I have.
That's fair.
Anyway, we're laughing
to the book back. Okay.
Yeah. The fact we're laughing so hard in a very serious live stream.
We were talking about something, Hannah's emotional distress.
What I was saying is that this was my second time reading this book, and I gave it 4 stars, and I really, really enjoyed it as I did last time. So, shall we move on to the spoiler section now? Because there's nothing else we can possibly say without talking about spoilers. So if I quickly say spoiler section, there we go. So, first of all, how would we have all survived in the noise? I'd love to know.
No, babe, I'm autistic. Not happening.
Basically.
I feel like, much like those women that were just like, out of here, like, it's really interesting because a lot of like this bit that we're going to sit here and think about now, like, as women and femme presenting, how we would have survived is our options were run away or find a man to protect us and run away. Because there's no way we could have, in that original I can't remember what it's called now, that original town,
Prentice Town.
Prentice, thank you, that was obviously adapted from New Haven or whatever it was called.
New Elizabeth, I think.
Yeah, New Elizabeth. There's no way we'd have survived that. Like, there's no way. What's absolutely terrifying is the dystopian parallels between that and like Handmaid's Tale, of like women serve exactly 2 functions, and even when they don't serve those functions, we are going to use them for those functions. Like the idea that they've got like these women and they were like, yeah, we're going to take your sons and kill everyone else. Wild. I don't need to have the noise. People generally know what I'm thinking constantly because it's written on my face. So I feel like doubly would not have survived. I feel like my only chance would have been to be like the woman who like guards the bridge, where it's just far enough away. Hildy, thank you. I'm terrible with names. I'll remember the whole plot, but the names are
remembering stuff. I never remember stuff.
Yeah. Glorious simp of a husband, loved him, but out in the woods with a gun by herself, because that's the only way you're surviving in that kind of like world. But I guess interestingly on that, because I obviously said that yes, women and femme presenting, if you are non-binary and you start presenting masc, would that change or adapt your noise?
I didn't think of that. I think no, because I think it's like biological.
See, that's what I was thinking when you were talking, Hannah, was I still want to know what causes the noise to only show in this gender binary presentation that we've had so far, men. Mm-hmm. And if it's genetic, then that is going to just be the genetic mate. I don't know what would happen to intersex people.
That's what I was going to say.
The same will happen to all animals, right? Like the animals are all communicating in some way. The
from humanity are.
Yeah, the creepy. So is it just the human Y chromosome that like instigates it? Because
but then I guess that would answer the question about intersex people, because we know what chromosomes they have. So that would then answer that. But I want to know. Like, I want to know in universe. Like, I hope that in the next 2 books we find out.
Well, see, because I was just checking that it was published in 2008, so it's like kind of pre this kind of discussion you would expect. So now I'm like, can Patrick Ness write some sort of prequely, sequely thing?
Funny you should say that. He is continuing this series, and the new one's releasing next year.
Amazing.
Oh,
tell us how trans people deal with things.
Yeah, that's all we want.
Trans and non-binary, we need to know, because if you transitioned from male to female, then if it is based on your genetics, then you're going to be walking around as a woman, and we have no idea how much they could actually do that to make you look female, but with your noise being programmed so no one would ever see you in this gender binary version that we've seen so far as a woman because your noise is coming out.
Or is the cure just to up your estrogen dose?
But then that wouldn't be, that would be like not genetics and biology instead of genetics. And then it's like, hello, my degrees were in science. Give me the
I feel like we need to write down our questions so that we can come back to this when the new book's out and be like, did you answer them? And if not, give us another book.
And if not, we need to write to Patrick Ness.
Dear Patrick, dear Mr. Ness, we have questions.
Yes, we are a bunch of complete adult human people. Answer your question, the questions about the YA series, please. Now.
Yep.
You need to know.
We need it. Tell us.
I've literally just written that down on my notes.
Good.
Thank you.
Love that.
Don't lose them.
Yeah. But what I was also going to say, though, was do you think with the noise and all of the women going away and to get out away and into safety, do you think they're going to find a town somewhere that is entirely women? Because
it is interesting that so far everywhere has been mixed gender. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting because I feel like, especially for the women that were escaping Prentice Town or anything like it that may have happened anywhere else, like, surely you would want to be away from men, like, unless you escape with a man that you like. I trust my partner, so if I escaped with him, I'd want to stay with him. But if you escape on your own, I wouldn't want to be around any blokes. I don't care. I can hear their thoughts. Stay away from me.
I don't want to be around blokes as it is. Like, in this world, without hearing their thoughts. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like,
And we're straight.
like, genuinely, it's so funny to me. Because, like, so I work at a school now. And I was talking to, like, some of my students. And one of them was like, yeah, I was seeing this guy, but he did. And I was like, say less. Sorry with the C. Dead to me. Not interested. Absolutely not. She was like, no, like, he's a nice guy, but I was like, C. In the C. And she's like, but you would say that, miss. You're like, you're in a relationship. I was like, yes. And I was single for like 1,000 years because men are the worst. Like, I waited until I was like good and ready to be like, all right, fine. You can have a chance. But like, I feel like men in general, get in the C. If there is an Amazonian style place, just women, it will be really interesting to see how they respond to what's going on. I would be surprised purely because I think what Patrick Ness seems to be exploring is the totalitarianist style of a patriarchy forged on fear and used to manipulate the ignorant, which is what most dystopias are, right? Like, at their core, it is the powerful manipulating the ignorant and keeping them ignorant and keeping them lower for superiority. What he's been more transparent about is that line between where this town, Prentice Town, defines a boy versus a man. And for that town particularly, it is violence. Like, that's the line, is when he has taken a life, he is a man. And they've chosen an arbitrary date of a 14th birthday to be that line for some unknown reason other than it's convenient for an audience of 13-year-olds to read about a 14-year-old going through this. It would be really interesting to me to read. So a lot of the thoughts I have about reading YA at the moment is, how would this be different if it was an adult book? So recently I read Felix Ever After for the first time, and I gave it 4 stars, and I felt like it would have been a 5 stars if it had been an adult book, because there are themes in it that actually, yes, they're important for teens to explore, but the conclusions that Felix makes would have been more interesting to me if he'd been an adult in that situation, because it brings into question a lot more of like the sexual relationships, and if it had been set at work rather than at school, how the bullying takes place would have been more interesting to me.
That's one of the intrinsic issues of reading YA as an adult, is no matter how well it is written, and like I said before, that this is very, in my opinion, very well written, but regardless, as an adult, for the vast majority of us, there is always something missing. And I feel like, Hannah, you're the least likely to have this issue just because you interact with children. I say children, but it's a secondary school.
They're still children. Like, they're definitely still children, yeah.
I know, but it made me think of like 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
I was thinking 7 when I said children, but like, you interact with young people on a daily basis, and so you can kind of see their mental processing a lot easier. Whereas for the rest of us, I haven't interacted with a child since I was one, not willingly. And so, like, reading these YA books.
Willingly. I just love the idea of this like 7-year-old being like, be my friend, and you being like, ew.
And so I always, like, potentially if I'd read this 14, I might have given it 5 stars.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I read it at 28, and that's not the book's fault. But then I still want to give my star rating as it is now.
Yeah.
And so it's like trying to balance that out. Of like, it's not for me. This is not written for any of us. We are reading this far too late. You can read things at any point as long as they're appropriate. But
then
like,
you're reading it with that lens of, and I think that's the thing, is I think for me, I find it really interesting. I was never a Patrick Ness reader at the age that these books were coming out. Like, I would have been the target audience in the same way that I was the target audience for Twilight that was coming out around the same. Like, all those books, like, I really was not a dystopia girly when these books came out, because this came out around the same time as like Hunger Games and Divergent and even like Uglies to a certain extent, like all of them coming out at the same time. I think I read Hunger Games and enjoyed it. I then read Matched and was like, dystopia is not for me. So I find it really interesting that actually I'm like, now I like a bit of dystopia, because what I like about this version is the science version of it. Like, and I think the sci-fi, whether it's YA or not, is really interesting because it kind of explores it in like a safe space of like that room versus this room.
But it would have been really interesting if we had an adult protagonist, especially for this whole thing of like at 14 you have to kill a man to become an adult. Yeah. I feel like someone who there would have had to be male for the story for it to work, but someone who like maybe came into Prentisstown from the outside and somehow didn't have the knowledge of it being this awful place, to find out that to become a man you have to kill a man, and then also to find out the age bracket for that. I feel like as an adult reading it, they would have been able to write it more impactfully if it was an adult, because then you couldn't be like, what do you mean someone that young? And whereas you're writing it for teens and you can't be like, it's someone so young, because the teens don't think they're young.
Yeah. Like, weirdly, I'd quite like Jacob's perspective, like the guy who's in like the leader of the last town that they're at before the waterfall scene, because he is a man of authority.
Is Jacob not the child?
I thought Jacob was the dad. Is it not Jacob the dad? What's the dad's name then?
The dad is the doctor.
Yeah, I've forgotten his name already. That's not good.
Yeah, Jacob's dad then, whatever his name is. Although, to be fair, him and his dad would be quite funny. Not funny, haha, but like, comparatively.
But even in that town, their reaction to a man from Prentisstown was correct. It wasn't, but like the correct response of not liking it. But regardless, they still ignored and belittled the girl.
Yeah, she's a woman,
despite the fact that the boy was unconscious.
Yeah, and like sending their women into like camps, for example, wild. So the idea that he sees that as normal and then is confronted with something like that, I think would be a really interesting perspective.
And it's really interesting to see that town versus the first town we go into outside of Prentisstown, which is almost matriarchal.
Yeah.
It's described as the women are in charge and are running things, and at the same time some of the men still have these very negative and patriarchal thoughts, partly because they've escaped from Prentisstown. I feel like that would be very hard to deprogram. Especially without therapists. But like with that more matriarchal town compared to then the further away you get from Prentisstown. My computer's frozen.
We can hear you just well.
Come back. There we go. The further that you get from Prentisstown, the more patriarchal you get again, because they're further away from having the horror so touchable.
Well, this. I want to ask Becca this specifically, as it's your live show, and I feel like I'm just ranting, as I knew I would.
I loved it, so just keep on going if you want to.
You have Prentisstown, then you have like the matriarchal town, then you have the patriarchal town closest to like Haven, right? Do you think it would have made a difference if it had been the other way around? Like, do you think Todd would have a different narrative arc if he had landed in the patriarchal town first?
Ooh.
I find it really interesting, and the reason I'm asking this, I do really want your answer, is because the idea that you've got this hub where they originally landed, and then a patriarchal town, and then a matriarchal town, and then a town that is purely dystopic. Like, that's the narrative. I appreciate they're not in a straight line. Like, obviously they've dispersed, but the idea that that's the narrative arc, I just think, your thoughts.
I'm going to have a think on this, to be honest, because obviously this whole book is about unlearning toxic masculinity. Sorry, I can't talk. But it's all about unlearning that. I think if Todd had seen it the other way around and gone from patriarchal town to maybe matriarchal town, I think it would have been very different, because obviously, because he saw the matriarchal town first, he started seeing maybe a different way of life and a different point of view of thinking about things. Because what I always get back to is the bridge scene where he's trying to cut the bridge and obviously it's not going, and he's getting really, really angry, and his thought process is, I have to hit Viola, I'm going to hit her, I'm going to beat her because this isn't going right. And I think because then he meets Hildy, he then sees an older woman that he's like, because he's obviously never seen that before in his life, and then seeing a different way of life and seeing that men and women can live together, and it's not like everywhere is going to be like this massively violent patriarchal society. I think it starts in maybe seeing that the way he has been brought up is not right. So I think if maybe he had seen the patriarchal town first again, I think it would have cemented more in his head, this is the way it's meant to be. And I think maybe he then would have gone on and actually maybe killed Aaron himself, or like, and made that step himself, or maybe it would have just cemented it more in his head that like Viola is sort of like the enemy in a way, that kind of thing. I don't know. You've just really sort of made me think about that.
I feel like you absolutely, like, that is, I think that's absolutely spot on. Like, I don't think you could have said that better, because I think you're right. For him to learn that something is like, I can't remember where it was like a YouTube video that was talking about every narrative is a main character discovering that something they know to be true is a lie. Like, that's every narrative, whether it's Luke discovering who his father is, or it's a wizard under a stairs. Do you know what I mean? Like, things like that. It's all, this is my expectation, that is a lie. For him, I think you're right. Him confronting that his way of life is a lie first means he can then see the lies other people are telling themselves. Like, the idea that, no, we're fine. Like, everything's fine. We've got doctors, we've got agriculture. You know, the women live over there in their little camps, and we're fine. Like, it's a lie. And he wouldn't recognize it as such if it were the other way around. I think you're right. I think it would be absolutely cemented in, this is the way.
Yeah, especially when you compare him to Davy, you know, the sheriff who goes after them, because he's so entrenched in the Prentice Town way of thinking that when he fights them, it always sticks out to me as well that he says that a woman is only good for being a whore, and if she isn't that, you kill her. You know, and it's that kind of thing. And I think Todd maybe could have gone, maybe not that far into that level of thinking, but I think he could have been very much on that same level of thinking if he had been into that patriarchal town first and hadn't have met Hildy and her sister and everybody else, you know. And what I wanted to say as well actually on that is how young they all are as well, and how deeply entrenched they are into this. Because the first time I read this book, because this is the second time I've read this book, I haven't read any of the others yet, so everything else is going to be a complete surprise to me, but the first time round I was imagining everyone older, you know, and I was thinking they were about 17, 18, because obviously they kept on saying that they're a man and things like this. And it's hit me so much harder this time round that Davy, who is so entrenched in everything Prentice Town has taught them and everything else, he's so entrenched in it, but he is only like 15 years old, you know. He is basically a child, and he is already basically a violent, abusive man who is still so misogynistic despite the fact that he's never met a woman, you know, or if he did meet a woman, he was only 2 when they were all murdered, you know. So I just think that's so interesting as well to see how young they are and how deeply entrenched it is, no matter how young they are. You know,
I think it's easier to radicalize kids. So it's why I think it's really interesting that Todd's being kept away and being the last one and so much younger than everyone is probably what saved his life. Like, fundamentally is what kept him out, is being able to be as far out of it as that. Yeah,
but even then he was still hearing everybody's thoughts all of the time, so he was also still getting entrenched in it all of the time with everybody else's memories of women. Because I remember him saying as well, like, girls wear skirts, they've always got their hair up in ponytails, and they've always got a smile on their face, and they're always cooking and cleaning, or sometimes they're doing stuff with less clothes on and stuff like this. So even he's remembering it from everybody else's point of view and seeing what they remember of women, and it is essentially just slaves, shall we put it that way? Like, they were essentially glorified maids with absolutely no sort of like rights, I guess, at the end of it or anything else. So I find it so interesting to see how he's been raised in this, but he doesn't quite go as far as everybody else, probably because he was kept that little bit further away from it. Not by much, because obviously they couldn't hide him that much, but he was still kept just far enough away from it, and he was just young enough that he could maybe think another way because he was shown a different way.
Yeah.
Like, quite obviously when he saw Hildy and everybody else, and he was hit with it very, very hard of, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, Abby, sorry. Go ahead,
The
Abby.
hand was so you could finish your point.
Yeah, it wasn't like you need to stop. You keep
Sorry,
going.
I was literally just rambling, and now I've just lost my thought anyway, so go ahead.
Okay, fine. But in future, the hand is because I would like to interrupt, but I also would like you to finish your thought.
Okay, cool.
I've just had something that I've wanted to ask, and so I was like, I'm just gonna with Prenticetown awful, and then matriarchal, and then the further away they get, and that last town that they meet before Haven. Haven itself, the town pre-Haven is really patriarchal, not to the point of murder, but very patriarchal. So when they got to Haven, would they have even listened to, what even is her name?
Viola.
Viola, thank you. Would they have even listened to Viola, who is the one who has the knowledge to actually contact the incoming ship, because Todd's got no fucking clue, because this is not his thing. Like, wonderful, they got to Haven, and then huge spoiler for some reason, but you know, they got to Haven, and then it's shit, they were beat there. But even if they hadn't been, would anyone have listened to Viola anyway, because they were getting more and more patriarchal the further you got from Prenticetown?
Because I was also thinking, is it going to turn out to be a metaphor? Because obviously all of them are like very, very religious, and they are sort of all very heavily into worshipping God and everything else and being godly. And I'm just wondering if Haven is going to was going to turn out to be something sort of heavenly. I don't know if I'm talking
Garden of Eden style, where women got kicked out in the first place, guys.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if maybe it was going. It's sort of like, because obviously Prenticetown split away because they didn't quite agree with Haven, did they? So I'm wondering if that was going to be slightly more on the matriarchal side of things, and the Prenticetown men went, absolutely not, we're out of here because we're arseholes, essentially, and they left because of that. And I'm just wondering if Haven is going to turn out that it was meant to be a more heavenly place, hence the name Haven, like safe haven. I don't know if I'm just talking out my arse or what, but
stop second guessing yourself. You're allowed to have these thoughts, Becca.
That's the whole point of what we're doing.
Yeah. Anyway, Abby, what were you also going to say then?
So, when I first started reading the book, I have owned my copy of this since about 2016. And so I did not look at the blurb. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll join in the read along. And I didn't click that it was sci-fi dystopian. And I'm like, I knew it was off from the real world, but you know, and I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, this seems like he's taken, you know, inspiration and or is writing about America's like colonization, like of Europeans coming and colonizing the North Americas, and the Spackle, I think they were called, were the indigenous Americans who were already present in the land with their weird, unknowable cultures and way of living. And this very religious, overly religious group of people that just keep coming and taking the land and destroying it with their machines. And it took me a while. It was until like the Spackle were mentioned, I was like, oh, it's sci-fi. Cool. Until that, I was like just thinking like fantasy based off of the colonization. And it was like, oh yeah, we landed from a different planet, the alien Spackle. I'm like, oh right, okay, through space.
Didn't realise it was sci-fi until they mentioned 2 moons. And then I went,
it's
a different planet.
You guys mentioned the 2 moons, and I kept reading, and I'm like, No one's mentioned any. It was much further in with the 2 moons than I thought it would be. But yeah, when I first started reading, I was just getting full on. And to me, it's clear that he was inspired by the colonization of North America by white Europeans, because it hits so many beats. And even especially watching America right now, and they're very Prentice Town currently.
Who's got an ice cream truck?
Fucking me.
You know what, that's
so
taking back.
It
That's
is
back because you.
It's 20 to 7.
It's so loud. Genuinely, I don't even think he's in my street.
It's March.
He
And
comes
it's
all
27.
year. He doesn't stop. He sells cigarettes and drugs from it. That's why
Wow.
it's loud, to wake them out of their blooming K-holes or something. Sorry, but it's true.
2 things. I just thought I'd give you an update on the straw. It's now a bouquet. That's what's happened this entire time we've been talking. That's the straw. Secondly, not to brag, I assumed it was sci-fi from the moment that he was hunting in the woods, but he had a fishing bike. So he talks about so he talks about his dog talking, like page 1, in the swamp, and he brought Manchi along with him, and that his bike doesn't work, his fishing bike. And I was like, why not just say electric bike? Why say fishing specific? And I was like, that felt very sci-fi. And then I think
I was too entrenched with
it comes up real quick after that.
I was too entrenched with seeing the similarities between the colonization and the book, and so my brain was like, oh, it's just fantasy because that obviously happened like 200-300 years ago.
Yeah.
To be fair, I was thinking this was Earth in the far-flung future. I didn't
I
realise
thought it was a reimagined Earth.
I knew it was sci-fi when I started because you all told me.
Yeah.
You did start it a bit later
I
than
just
we did.
waited
Yeah,
until I got all the details that I needed, and then just had to.
I'll do that next time. I'll let other people finish the book and be like, yeah, this. And be like, I shall pick this up now.
Cool.
Oh no,
Maybe just chapter. We're in space. Great.
Maybe just actually look at Storygraph and see what it like categorized it as, rather than going, I own it. What happens?
I mean,
I
to
do
be
that
fair,
with so many of my books. I don't know what any of them are about. My TBRs are like, I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to read this book.
to be fair, with like a lot of books, and I think with this one specifically, it is quite good to go into it without much knowledge, because I think it hits a lot harder when you're not expecting it to be what it is, because you think, oh yeah, it's just about a kid who's got like all this noise, and then he comes across a patch of no noise, you know, and it all goes from there. You don't realize how hard this is going to hit. You know,
I do really want more about the spackle.
oh
like,
yeah,
especially
definitely.
with them being, you know, essentially supposed to be the same as the Indigenous Americans. I really want to learn more about how their interactions, maybe that's what the new book coming out will be, because I see kind of where this is intending to go, and Patrick Ness could pleasantly surprise me, but you know, the general story arc doesn't seem to be leaning that way, and I would love to see like almost a prequel of how the spackle dealt with this invasion, and I'd love to see that.
But they didn't.
Well, yes, but you know,
I do know he did short stories, because there's one in the back of my one which is about
Yeah,
Viola
me too.
on the ship just before
Same
she
edition.
Yeah, same edition. And I know there's 2 others as well in the back of the next 2, but I don't own those editions, unfortunately. I've got this edition instead. None of my colours match, and I don't think they've got short stories in, but I did speak to Olivia, and she said she had to look up the short stories, so they should be around somewhere, but I don't know if any of those are about the spackle or anything else, but that could be quite interesting to see if he did anything in the originals with that.
yeah.
I think there are a lot of echoes, though. I think you, as much as I'm joking, like I think it's very easy to assume it's a kind of alternate Earth, because yes, the rounding up and killing of the spackle and stuff is very colonization coded, and then the killing of the women, because they don't have this thing that everyone else does, and heaven forfend we don't know what women are thinking, is very reminiscent of like the Salem witch trials, which were not really that far off Jamestown and the original kind of settlements and everything that happened. So I think, yeah, it's very Very old world coded in that way.
And actually, just thinking about it, they call this world the New World, don't they? Which is what the colonizers of America called America. They called it the New World. So
yeah,
I mean, they still do.
Yeah.
I literally just read, I was going to grab it, but it's in a stack. I literally just read Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, and that was written and set in like the late 50s. And the characters in there are talking about, oh, the old world is so much more difficult to live in. I can't wait to get back to the new world. In the 1950s. Like.
Yeah, so that's really sort of, he wasn't hiding that coding, was he?
Ooh. But I guess again it's YA, and it's not that younger readers are stupid, it's that younger readers have less, just because of time, have had less exposure to these commonalities and these things, and so making it more obvious means that a younger reader with less experience of the world can pick up on the concept easier. Kind of hammering it home so much means that a 13-year-old reader may notice the links to colonization and the Indigenous Americans and the patriarchy existing in our society, whereas an adult reader, you would expect a higher level of knowledge prior to coming into the book, just because you've lived for 20 odd years plus.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, on a slightly sort of lighter note, but what do we think about Aaron being able to carry on the whole way through? He was like the melting Terminator, in the sense that he just kept on coming. And I was like, how is this guy still alive? You know, like, did anybody else have that moment of going, how is he still going? You know.
I don't know how he was. Like, there must have been some sort of, like, medic patch that he had or something.
Because the guy was eaten by a crocodile. Half his face is missing. He's been beaten up. He's going on foot as well, and not.
He's the OG. He is inspired by every horror film villain ever.
Yeah, because I was going to say he's like Michael Myers in the sense
Michael Myers, Ghostface, Jason. Yeah. You think they're down, and then they get back up again. You need 2 taps to the head. It's the only way to do it.
Because the thing is Todd gets that infection from the stab wound, whereas Aaron's missing half of his face and is still going. And I'm like, how is this guy still going? Like, he should be dead 20 times over.
Yeah, that's one lack of being able to take down score-wise for me.
What?
Sorry. Both of you were speaking.
You go first, Abby. You go first, Abby.
I'd said just from him not being able to eat or drink, he should be dead.
Yeah.
How was he eating and drinking? Like, successfully.
Just chucking it at his face. Just
he's pouring it in the gap in his cheek at this point.
God.
Grim. Not wrong though. What I said is that is one of the things that caused it to have a lower rating for me, because I can completely believe him being caught in those situations, and him being an ever-present threat was terrifying. But you're right, he suffered so much, and then it is kind of like apt that this boy gets a minor wound and immediately catches a fever, whereas Aaron's like, I'm missing half a face. Yeah. Still strong enough. Like, that's mental.
I can kind of get on board with a half face, but the nose, the way that was described with how much it was bleeding.
Yeah.
And I was like,
the blood loss as well.
Yeah.
I think part of me was thinking, okay, maybe the virus or whatever we think it is that causes the noise, like, does it? Because they haven't, like, they didn't really speak about sickness and stuff. Like, I don't remember, maybe I just missed it, but when they were talking about the people in Prentice Town, I don't really remember them, like, a mention of a doctor. And everything is so primitive. So I was like, right, is it just that, you know, you become a man and you don't get as affected by stuff? But I don't buy it.
It is a bit much. Again, I know it's YA, but also, like, some small level of realism would be appreciated.
Like, you're telling me him getting stabbed in the end is what does it, but not a crocodile thing to the face and a dog bite in his whole nose. Like, no.
What I was going to say as well, how do we feel about the fact that it was Viola who killed him in the end and not Todd?
I expected it. I'm torn. Because I kind of, like, I get the whole point of being like, oh, don't have Todd kill him because then they win and he's a man. But I'm like, they only win if you believe that ideology as well, though. Like, if you kill him, like, I get the whole like, oh, that makes you complicit, but I'm like, but that's a completely different thing. You're not just standing in front of him and killing him as a sacrifice. You are saving yourself. Because if we believe that, then does the spackle not count? Because I feel like it should.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what I was going to say is, I quite like that it was Viola because it means that Aaron didn't get his dying wish.
That, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, yeah, you deserved that.
It was a bigger twist in 2008 than it would be if another book did the same thing today. In 2008, that was like, oh, the girl killed him. Like, and obviously this book was progressive for its time, definitely, and is still fairly progressive. But yeah, especially like in the noughts, and like this girl that has just kind of let Todd do everything because she's like.
Oh, well, you say let's do everything. She actively tried to stop him from killing the spackle. So it's not like,
yes, I didn't mean that one. I meant
no. So what I'm saying is like the idea that she is the killer. If we're basing her or using her in the classic naughties way of saying she is the moral compass as the woman, and yes, he can do all the hard graft. She's got the cool tech. He does the moral quandaries, and she comes in with the answers. Her choosing to actively kill someone pursuing them at that point is really interesting, or would have been more interesting had I been a teenager, versus now, where it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't she defend herself? Like, as the norm, why wouldn't she do that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of us being too old and being a few years removed from this being a more unused device. I feel like it's used a lot more. We have a lot more strong women in literature now than even then, and it wasn't even that long ago. I mean, it's coming up on 20 years, fuck my life, but you know, like we've got a lot more strong women in even YA and children's literature than we did at the time. And so I feel like it would have had a fairly big impact, one, because it's children reading this, and then two, because it wasn't really seen then. It was always the men or boys being the kind of active aggressor.
Yeah.
So I imagine that would have been like moment for a lot of the lads.
Shocking, thrilling, spicy.
Oh, don't use spicy in that term right now.
Yeah, not that one. Not that one.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so internet spicy means internet spicy. Gen Z spicy in person, not necessarily the same. That just means like a little bit of like, huh. Like it's just like almost antagonistic.
All right. Are you going to be our Gen Z slang translator?
I hope not.
Like when a cat hisses at you and you go, "Oh, you're spicy."
Yeah. That kind of context. Do you know what's really funny? So my boss is 3 months older than me. That's it. And yeah, the kids will start talking to me in chronically online chat and describe things as spicy and peak and blah, blah, blah. And he just looks at them like they're speaking a completely different language. And they said something to him the other day, and they were like, they said that I had, like, they were like, oh, miss, you've got absolute drip or something like that. I was like, oh, thank you. And literally Joe looked at me and went, what does that mean? Like, what? He was so offended. And I was like, I'm so sorry that I am chronically online.
It's like my girls, my brownies, I take this with me to every meeting, and they're like, oh my God, you're so preppy. And I'm like, thank you.
But also their preppy is not our preppy.
No.
Our preppy is like tartan skirts and like little
See, I have asked them, I said to them, and what does that mean? They were like, you're just preppy. And I was like, okay, so even you don't know what you're saying.
Your life together, because like they associate prep with like prepping for the gym or like getting like your stationery, like it's that kind of like you've got
rather than
these girls. They're like the most of them are about 9 coming up 10. So like I feel like a lot of them they're just kind of repeating without actually understanding. And I'm like, you're gonna have a shock in a couple of years when you have an actual English class and you have to like contextually just like describe what a word means. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, wild, crazy. Anyway, can I start talking about how sad I was about the dog now?
I was about to say
before we jump into the dog, just because it's like 5 to 7. At some point, this person's gonna come, so I might end up just dipping. I will be back if I am, but obviously if you finish, then bye, in case I don't get a chance to say I'm leaving. I didn't want to interrupt the dog conversation.
Understandable.
Because I know Hannah's going to go off for a good 10 minutes.
Hannah's got thoughts.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the death of Manchi. Hannah?
He hits his dog on page 1, right? On page 1, he smacks his dog, and that's just how he trains him. That's how he treats this animal who loves him. And like, okay, right. I need to remember that my cat is there.
Can I ask a really important question? What kind of dog is Manchi? Like, I'm assuming alien dog, maybe, but like, is he described?
I just thought it was a mutt.
No, they literally just they say what kind of
They
dog.
call it a wheeler dog, but I think that's like a
no. There is a bit in it where he talks about what breed of dog he is, because I remember being like, I need to look that up later.
I imagined he was like the dog from, and I hate to mention it, but Good Omens, that kind of dog, which is like a small.
I thought he was a bit bigger.
I basically had in my head golden retriever, but like slightly small, like cocker spaniel sized.
No,
I had that, but looking quite ratty with like longer hair.
Yeah. So like sort of golden retriever, but like more kind of wiry.
Yes.
Like cocker spaniel sized.
Also, whilst Hannah's looking up the species, I will say that the way that Todd is treating the dog and how that changes over time, I feel like also matches with Todd's learning from Prenticetown and moving away from that reality.
I've also just had a thought. So I typed in wheeler dog because I know that's what they call him. And what's coming up are Rottweilers. And then I thought, what if though? Because like it's not that they've called that. They've also just gone wheeler. Closest thing is Weiler. What if? Because obviously a lot of the words are not written how they are spelled. So what if it is just like a sort of language thing, and he's not a Rottweiler. I'm not having it. Rottweilers are softies, but he ain't a Rottweiler.
No. So so I'm confusing this dog with a dog that I read in the book just before, because he is a cross between a Jack Russell and a Cairn Terrier, which is basically the ones that look like teddy bears.
Yeah.
Like the little like Ewok looking ones. That is not how I envisaged him, because in my head, in the Twisted ones, she's got essentially like an American working dog. So it's like a little bit bigger, more like a border collie with shorter fur, but that kind of like lean working body. That's the kind of dog I was imagining the whole time. The idea of him kicking this tiny little baby.
I'm not laughing at that idea. It's just I love how passionate you are.
Oh,
correct passion level.
Yes.
Yeah. Sort of like
yeah.
That is exactly what I was thinking.
I'm now finding hilarious because that is actually a different version of the breed of dog that my partner's best friend has. So apparently, he's called Tyrion after the Game of Thrones character. He's about the same height as me.
Yeah, those dogs get big. So that's the kind of dog I was imagining, because I imagined him as a working dog rather than just we've given you a puppy who will stay a puppy forever because you need a puppy. But I do wonder if that's because that's the kind of dog they've gone for in the film. But yeah, so
the film.
Yeah, with Tom Holland in it.
Yeah,
I haven't even seen the film, so that.
No, I didn't want to watch the film until I read the books.
Yeah. Apparently, the film is absolutely awful because they did the first run, they showed it to the producers, and they went, "This is unwatchable." So they had to go back and refilm it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had to refilm it. By which point, Tom Holland's grown older.
Yeah.
So apparently he starts looking visibly different between the scenes. And also they completely miscast nearly everyone.
Oh.
You know, because they've got Nick Jonas.
Nick Jonas in it. I'm down, bye.
I'm surprised that's a surprise to you. I feel like you're like, I know everything about him.
I don't do films and I haven't paid any attention to his acting work in recent years.
Shut up. Who does he play?
Yeah.
Davy Prentice Jr.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sorry. Nick Jonas does not have that kind of
honestly
evil.
Isn't he also like a super MAGA now?
He would be better cast as like Todd, and I'm not supporting that idea, but bet more than Davy.
Like, I do think he's a bit evil because he's a bit MAGA and he's pro-Israel, but like I wasn't expecting like visible evil. He looks like he's in a boy band because he is, you know?
Because he's in a boy band. Yeah. Like crazy. Also, anyway, back to the dog abuse. let's get back on track.
Out of context, Cole, there's Hannah's name.
Anyway, but
Davey's meant to be like 15 and Nick Jonas is like 35 in this movie.
Yeah, why do they
Nick Jonas is not.
The thing is, though, using adults as teenagers is so common because, like, Nina.
Yes, but at least with Tom Holland, they found someone that looked like baby.
Yeah, but he will always
be fair.
Exactly. Whereas Nick Jonas does not look like baby.
Because the guy, so in Love Actually, the kid that plays the 12-year-old and Keira Knightley, who plays a married woman, were only 18 months apart in age.
Yeah. To be fair, that kid hasn't aged since. He
must have some like glandular issue or something. Like, how is he still literally a child?
No, look, he's got my.
But like,
She's got your.
I am 29 this month. I get mistaken.
Every time you say that, it is crazy to me. You are closer to age to me than Abby is. That Emma is. That is insane.
I know. I mean, in my defense, she is only 1 year older than me.
Yeah. She's only a few months older than me, but still.
Both of us are like, excuse you.
I get ID'd trying to buy scratch cards. So, like, this is the level. I got ID'd last November, seeing a 15 rated movie. They literally went, "How old are you?" And I went, 28. And they went, "Fine," and let me through. But they had
from the sheer anger. We're going to let you in.
Like, the amount of times we've got new neighbours, I am dreading them asking me how I get away with having dyed hair for school. Because this is happening multiple times. Well, I get people going, "You've got bright green hair. Does your school allow that?" And I'm like, "I'm 28." And they're like, "What?"
You should be like, "I'm at college." I don't care.
I tried to get into Old Trafford football stadium, and Chris walked in, my partner, and he's got a beard, and he is a bit older than me. So they look at him, they pat him down, then they can check his bag and stuff. And then I walk up after him, clearly with him, and the woman, to be fair, she can't see my grey hairs because she's the same height as me. And she looks at me and she goes, "How old are you?" Because she thought I was under 18 and you can't touch the under 18s. And I was like, "Just pat me down, lady.
Touch me.
Just touch me."
To be fair, this baby face got 4 bottles of water into Taylor Swift. They literally, I opened up my bag and they went, "That's water, you're fine, off you go." Basically, like, usually because they take the lids off you and take the entire bottle
like
off
a sniff and stuff.
And I was like, going to be hiding them in my pockets and everything. I just walked through and they went, "Yeah, sure, you're fine, off you go."
See, that's really funny to me because, like, so I had that for a while, but like not since my mid-20s has anyone ID'd me for anything. And now I've reached that stage where, like, my grey hairs aren't up top, they're out front. So, like, it starts from here.
Oh, mine are here.
Yeah, like it's coming through. I'll buy like paracetamol, for which they have to think you look 25 to buy it. They don't even look at me. This is it. This is what happens. I'm buying paracetamol and they just go, gone.
It's like, at least look. Like, at least check my face.
And you know what's really funny is, like, I remember, like, my mum made a joke once. Like, she was buying some ciders for her. I happened to be there and they asked for my ID. And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's fine." And Mum went, "Are you going to ask me for my ID?" And I was like, I don't ever want to be that person. No. But, like, sometimes when they come and they don't even look at you and they just tap, like, visibly over 25. And I just think, "Thank you. Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right."
They did that when I was with my partner, who, again, is a fair bit older than me, but also looks young himself. But they would just pass him through and click visibly over 25. And I'm stood next to him after having, in the same supermarket, been ID'd and followed around the shop because they thought I was trying to steal for chocolate liqueurs. Anyone who doesn't know, you must be 16 to purchase them in the UK, or at least in England. And they ID'd me and thought I was like a stealing youth. And I'm stood next to him and they just click the visibly over 25. And I'm like, why does being next to a man with a beard make me look a decade older than you thought I looked yesterday?
Should they not be concerned that you're like being groomed or something at that point?
Where's the consistency? This is also my problem. Like, literally, it was the next day. I was like, "So you're telling me that I could have came here with him and you wouldn't have ID'd me for these chocolate liqueurs, but me coming here the next day?" And I'm aware it's different staff on shift.
Unless they thought he was your dad.
But then you still have to ID.
If you were buying.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If Abby's there, they should have ID'd Abby anyway, in case he was buying.
The only time you can get away with not IDing when a kid is with an adult is when the kid looks like they are, like, under 10.
Yeah.
And, like, come on. Even Becca doesn't look under 10.
Yeah. My mum always bought alcohol and stuff in the supermarket when I was like 15.
I bet you're Scottish.
Very true. Very true.
They're like, we've got bigger problems.
You know, we went to a bar once. This was like probably about 10 years ago. So I was like 18, 19. My mum was in her like late 40s. They ID'd her and not me. I was like, hold on. I am the one that's barely legal. She is my mother.
I mean,
she felt great.
Best day of her life.
Yeah. Not the day I was born. That was definitely the nightmare.
I mean, from what I've heard about birth, I don't blame her for that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Anyway, so page 1, he hits his dog. Not chill with that. He does it several times, and I just remember thinking, Ness, if you touch this dog, and not only did he touch the dog, the idea that that knife comes down and cuts into Manchi. Now, if it is a small terrier, the tail's not massive anyway. Like, that's not a big tail. It's not a massive target. Terrifying. Where I will be honest, I knew there was animal abuse in this, right? I read up on that trigger. It was really brutal when I listened to it, because I was listening to it as an audiobook on my way to work. Not ideal. Monday morning, being confronted with that scene, I think it was. And I thought, that's fine, because in literature and film, usually, and this is where he got me, he lured me to a false sense of security. Usually, if an animal or person suffers a massive injury like that, they will survive at least. Because that's the trauma, right? He went through that and then was killed anyway. And actually, to be fair, like, Becca warned me that it was like going to be brutal. It was not nearly as brutal as I thought it was going to be. The idea of having his neck snapped, and the way it is described is probably as efficiently as you can describe that. For me, the bit that made me cry, the bit that got me, was one line specifically, which is, and Manchi said Todd, like he didn't understand why I was leaving him behind. I gave myself chills. I am going to cry again if I think about it too hard. Like, that to me, whenever it comes to like animals in literature, I'm a mess, because they don't understand. They are wholesome creatures just trying to survive. In this, we have them given sentience and conversation. Like, he literally tells Manchi his plan, and Manchi does the plan, and Manchi is safe until he isn't. And I hated that. And screw you, Patrick Ness.
I literally had to DNF the book Pax by Sarah Pennypacker, which I don't know if anyone knows it. It's got the most gorgeous cover. With
didn't you buy that from Waypoint? Because it's
I don't. I've had it for years, but I might have got. I can't remember. I might have got the paperback, because I had the really nice hardback, but because it's John Klassen that illustrates it. The basic gist of it is, Pax is this fox whose family got killed when he was a kid, and then basically this like kid takes him in, and he's like his dog. But the book literally starts with them in the back of the car, the kid's with his dad. They drive into the woods and they leave the fox. And it's literally just him, the fox, describing the car driving away. And I think the whole book is like him finding his way back to his boy. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this. And I will never do it. I will never sit and read a whole book about this fox just trying to find his family. I'm just going to live with the knowledge that actually that never happened. And he's just happy because I can't do it. And I kind of got that same thing with Manchi. Like, it's just the fact he always says Todd, and he kept saying Todd with like a question mark, and he's going Todd, and I'm like,
no. I will legitimately cry if I keep.
And then as soon as the chapter was done, like, I went to my mum, I went, the dog just died, and then I tucked into my halloumi wrap quite happily. I was over it.
You did that for me. To be fair, I made a point because Becca had said that this is coming, and I paused as he grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, and I was like, this is it. Like, he's not making this. So I paused it, drove to work in silence, because I was like, I cannot listen to this scene before teaching. Like, that is not happening. So I then, when I got back in the car, it automatically kicked it onto Spotify, because my car will connect to Spotify first. I have to then actively put on like an audiobook. And I was like, oh yeah, because we got to that bit, hadn't we? So I then came home, made myself a cup of tea, and then listened to it. And I think that probably helped. Whereas the tail cutting scene was like a real like shock value moment. I think the fact that I had been prepared. So if anything like that happens in book 2 or 3, just tell me. Just tell me.
I'll look it up later. I haven't looked it up yet, but I will look up later to see if there's any more animal death. And I
my reaction was a lot more like Emma's. So I was reading and it happened. And I was sat at my computer desk downstairs and Chris was gaming. And I sat reading. I was like, oh. And then I kept reading. And Chris... And then Chris was in the middle of a match on his live game, Destiny 2, if anyone cares. And so he then finished that and was able to converse and was like, what happened? I was like, the dog died. He just kept reading. Because it had been like...
To be fair, that was a very similar thing for me. I was like, oh, I'm quite sad. And then just carried on.
Yeah. I'm going to put you down. Don't need to bite me. This is why I phoned about getting your neuter done. Because you are a menace. Say hello.
Oh, is he in his terrible 2s?
Yeah, well, 7-month-old, yes. But, don't show them off. This is a public live.
To be fair, actually, I might be able to show you really quickly. That's Horatio conked out on the sofa.
Oh my God.
Just literally, he has only just started, like, as a cat, like, not like just here in general, but as a cat, not being like crazy like that all the time. And one thing he does that drives me up the wall, he will not let me have a lie-in.
No.
And, like, I don't mean like you've got to get up and feed me. I mean, he will wake me up between 5 and 6, which, to be fair, on a working day, not a problem because I'm getting up latest 6:20 anyway. I have to get up. He would like some water from the bath because he won't drink it out of his bowl. Fine, happy to do that. And then I would like to feed him and go back to bed. No, I have to. If there's food in his bowl, he's not interested in it. He might even go outside. If I get back into bed, you better believe he will be there shouting at me 10 minutes later. Like, and you can ask Zach. Like, I got up, my alarm went off at 6:30, fed him, dealt with him, fine. Got back into bed. At 7:30, he came in and yelled at me. Mm-hmm. And Zach was like, that's fine. You have a lie-in, because I was at work really late yesterday. You have a lie-in. I'll sort him out. Brilliant. 8:30, he's back again. Like, and it genuinely, he's mad. Because then I would come downstairs. I came downstairs at 8:30. He curled up on the windowsill and went to sleep.
See, Biff's still in his own room. He's in my back lobby. But I have Theo. Theo's fine in the morning, doesn't wake me up, but at night, he wants to be on me. So even if I'm lying on my side, and he's a big cat, he will balance himself on me. And, like, I can, like, sugar to get him off. And it takes a lot to convince this cat to get the blooming hell off me so I can get comfy.
Yeah.
And then he'll sit on the pillow. I actually have a picture of me somewhere where I was lying on my side and I wouldn't let him lie on me. He goes to the pillow and then he just went and sat on my head. Bum right at my face. Like, it was horrific because that cat farts badly.
Well, like, I mean,
that's my rat collection here. So I'm gonna dip, but I might be back.
See you later. Yeah, Horatio. And thing is, he's so smart. The one thing I'm like, there's a line in the Gatsby film. I don't know if it's in the book proper because I DNF'd it and didn't really like it. Is when Daisy says she wishes her child was ignorant. I wish my child were ignorant. I wish my cat was stupid. He's so smart because he won't. And like when I say he yells at me, I don't mean like in a "mother, where are you" kind of way. He the other day, like a maniacal genius, screamed like he was in pain. Like I thought he'd hurt himself. Like I got out of bed so quick, and he's just sat at the top of the stairs, being like, "Good, it's breakfast time." Like. Absolutely fine. Maniacal genius. And also an idiot.
At the same time, if you get an idiot pet, you're still in trouble. You know?
The idiots are fine, because they mean well at least. He is not meant well.
It's maliciousness.
Yeah. He is malicious, for sure.
I mean, I'll always remember my aunt has always had a dog. At least one, ever since I was a kid. And one of them really liked sitting on the sofa and laying on the sofa. So my nan would sit on the sofa and the dog would slowly wiggle behind my nan, get her paws and push her off.
Hilarious.
Yeah. And the new dog will climb on top of the sofa and sit on the backrest. Just on the backrest for no apparent reason. It's half blind, half deaf, still going to sit up there, surveying the rest of the world. And you just go, oh, okay then. You're just going to sit there, are you? Fine.
He is so desperate to be up on the bookcases. And unfortunately, that because we are renting, we can't screw them to the wall. So they wobble. So we've had to put loads of stuff up, which is why I got him this brand new cat tree so that he can be up. Even that's not up enough. Nothing is up enough.
He does like the top of your car, though.
Yeah, that was fun today. Came out and was just like, oh, hey, Horatio. What's really scary is he has taken to climbing into my car. So I've got a drive now, which I've never had before. And with that comes the luxury of being able to take shopping out of my car straight through my front door, as opposed to halfway up the road, which is what I'm used to. Went to go get bags the other day, realised he was in my car. Great, lovely, had a jolly old time. Another time, I shut the boot, and it wasn't until I walked past the driver's seat that I saw he was sat on my seat. Easily could have just locked it, gone inside, and not realised he was there. He was just hanging out. He's like, I'm here. Like, he's to be fair, I'm always really worried that he's going to get a bit too comfortable around cars. Like, I don't want him to, I want him to be scared of the car. But he has taken, like, if I pick up Zach from work, he will come running from the back garden and then he will climb into the car at the moment one of us opens the door. But he does, like, if the engine's on, he stays away, which is good because it's quite nice here. It's quite quiet. I do not want him getting used to car sounds. That scares the daylights out of me.
Yeah.
To bring it back into chaos walking, would you prefer for the cat to have the noise so you could then know that they understand the language of saying, no, do not get in the car?
I don't need him to have noise because he's vocal enough and I know he understands me because, like, he will climb up onto the mantelpiece. Now, we used to have loads of, like, knickknacks and photo frames and, like, nice things on the mantelpiece. Now what I've got is all of my canvas editions for Terry Pratchett. And they're my really, really pretty editions and they are covered in muddy footprints because he'll sleep up there. And if I put anything else up there, he will knock it over. And what he does is he looks at me, meows to get my attention. If I try and, like, ignore him, he will meow to get my attention. And then he'll, like, start scratching at them. So, like, the reason I put my canvas ones there is because I know that I can afford to replace them as opposed to, like, knickknacks that are, like, irreplaceable, etc. He has jumped to the TV to get my attention and just pulled that down before.
I'm just the muddy footprints. I'm laughing my head off because you two both know, but I had cats growing up. My mum used to tell me off if when I was in the house on my own, and by that point it was usually just it was just one cat. The other cat had passed already. If I didn't, when she came in through the cat flap, grab her and clean her paws with an old dishcloth. Because dirty paws not allowed in the house. And I would get told off if I didn't clean her paws. So you may need to get an old dishcloth.
Zach wishes I would do that. Horatio hates his paws being touched. Like,
so did Tigger. I still had to. I was there holding this scrabbling,
like, wrangling.
cat. I'm like, I don't want to do this. She's making me. You know her too.
Zach doesn't like me wearing shoes upstairs. Which, like,
why would you wear shoes in the house?
Why would I?
Yeah.
So I grew up in a really old house, where the carpets upstairs were older than I was. And there were nails in the floorboards and, like, it was old wood and we had an earthquake and things got changed. But it meant, no, but this is the thing, is we weren't really a slippers family. So I would wander around in socks or my trainers. Like, we would just wear shoes inside. We just didn't care. We got a cream carpet. This is how much, like, this is how much we were not used to having to think about things like that. When I go to other people's houses, I have to actively think, I've got to ask to take my shoes off, haven't I? Do you want me to take my shoes off? And if people say yes, please, I secretly hate them because I don't want to get my socks out. Like, don't get me wrong, right now, I'm wearing these really cute sparkly socks. Great. They match. If I know I'm going to someone's house and that I suspect they're going to ask me to take my shoes off, I will actively find my newest matching pair of socks because I hate it.
One, who judges people for their socks? Who cares? But two, like, it's literally written. If someone's wearing mismatching socks, I'm not going to judge them. But then,
no, mismatching's not. No, not mismatching. Dirty socks. Like if you've been walking around and there's like the mud underneath.
But like, it's literally because you came around to mine and I made you take your shoes off. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is because me and Chris were both brought up in a more standard British household tradition of take your damn shoes off. But the second one is that it's written into the contract. Like, contractually, we are not allowed to have shoes being placed sole down in the living room.
Yeah, that's
in our rent. So it was like, even if this wasn't us,
I've had too many splinters, too many nails, or stones, because like we had a dog, so like if there were like bits of debris places, the amount of times I had and also here's the other reason. Here's the key reason. I walk into stuff all the time, constantly. Like I have bruises all up my thighs from walking into like desks and stuff. My toes are so bent. No, you don't get it, Abby. I have slippers. I've had multiple slippers and it doesn't matter because I never put them on. I put socks on when my feet are cold. I put socks on all the time, to be fair. And shoes on. And if I come home and forget to take them off, Zach gets annoyed. I have Uggs that were like my indoor shoes for a while, but like they have to feel like shoes.
I also have a pair of Uggs that my parents got me very kindly from an outlet store in the States, and then I can never justify wearing them outside because they're just going to get ruined and they were expensive. So I wear them as winter slippers. So like that's a good way of like actually like if you were wearing shoes that you were like, yes, they are shoes, but these are my in the house shoes, I would be much less judgmental than bringing in outdoor shoes.
My dad has always worn very classic male work shoes, like the black lace up work shoes. And then he's come home and always put on either slippers in the winter or sliders. I was not really raised by my dad because he was at work all the time. I was raised by au pairs who didn't really care. And like I said, like the house is old. Like it was, my mom just leaves shoes everywhere. Her shoes are either on or they're just around.
I would like you to know that that's the least relatable sentence you've ever uttered in your life.
Raised by au pairs. Yeah,
raised by au pairs. Like you said that, and I felt my mother start crying.
Yeah, my mum would work from 7 a.m. until about 8 o'clock at night. My dad would work roughly the same amount of hours.
I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. I'm just saying it's very middle class and neither me or Becca can relate.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how much my mother worked, we could not afford that. My mum did not work. No, actually, sometimes she did work the same hours because she would work a full day at a primary school and then would drive home from the primary school just because it was on the way, quickly drop stuff off and then go and work retail until 10 p.m. at night. So she actually did, for a time, do the same hours. And even then, no way on
who looked after you?
Forsaken Earth could we afford an au pair.
Who looked after you?
When I was younger, we had the privilege of military. So you just shove them with some random person that you don't know.
Yeah.
But if anything goes wrong, you've got a load of blokes that'll be angry and have guns, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And then older, I used to have to go into work with my dad, to be fair.
Yeah.
But,
so the au pair was something like 80 quid for the week because they live in. So like, yeah. Because so you basically you pay for their food because they live with you. So you're paying for their food, their electric, everything else. They come over usually on a student visa because they're learning English or studying something else. And what you're essentially giving them is a week's worth of pocket money to like look after us in those hours. And then more if you want them to like if they like volunteered to like clean and stuff, like we would do all of that ourselves. We were expected to like clean up after ourselves. They were literally just a live-in babysitter because my mum's side of the family are the worst and just didn't support my mum in any way, shape or form. And my dad's side of the family lived too far away. They didn't have anyone else. So having wasn't any way to do it.
Yeah, family was like 200 miles away, and that was the close ones. But yeah, it just wasn't. It's not a thing for working class families. It's not even if theoretically they could afford it. It's not something that's ever discussed, and it's not seen as an option. It's seen as very middle class. Even if they could afford it, it's seen as that's for people like us.
Yeah, it's really weird to me, and this is so off the topic of chaos walking. It's so weird to me because like my mum often describes herself as like middle class, and she is. Like, she grew up in London. She went to a working class comprehensive, but her dad was a police officer and her mum was an au pair. Like, that's how they met in the first place. My dad's family are very working class. My granddad was a lorry driver and then a driving instructor, and my gran was a teacher.
I feel like a driving instructor is a middle class occupation.
Not in the area he worked. like it's not like I think maybe now, because it's the idea of like you've got to like, I think there's like a level of prestige to it. It's got to be like a decent car and there's like upkeep and like it's an educated thing. I think because he came from being a lorry driver first, it was like you had a car so you could teach people type thing. And it was like he was teaching other lorry drivers, and he did like he used to volunteer for like ambulance driving and things like that. But it's wild to me because my dad's side of the family, having grown up working class, my uncles are not working class, and my uncles are very middle class. And although we are although we've had that upbringing, like this is how like middle class my uncle is. His wife bought him a Mercedes because she could afford to pay the 40 grand in cash for his birthday. Like, I live paycheck to paycheck, like scraping the barrel with what I can afford kind of thing. Set up my own business, was rinsed in lockdown. Like, so it's really weird. Like, I do appreciate that. Yeah, I will say something like, that's not relatable at all. But it's also like, it's bizarre because I think my parents would have relied on family if they could have afforded to. But there was no way they could drive like the hour and a half it would have been every day if my nan had come and like picked us up or whatever, because it just was not going to happen. Whereas my cousins who lived closer very much did, and yet could afford much better kind of childcare than we could. So yeah, it's just weird. What's really, really weird though is now that I work at a school with people who are not just middle class, but like aristocratic, and I'm like, this is weird. Like, this is so jarring. So yeah,
this is how we feel when you mention your childhood.
My many au pairs. You know what's so funny is like,
look, having one is weird enough.
Yeah, like because they were just like, to me, they were just 18-year-old, 19-year-old girls that came over and would like hang out and like plait my hair. Like, when I say I was a child, I mean this was up till when Kieran was old enough to go to nursery. So it was probably only until he was 6 years old. So probably about 6 years. And yet for me, that was like a really like formative time of my childhood. So yeah, it's just bizarre. And it's made me the person I am today.
Like, and then there was me raised by a single parent on universal credit until I was 11. So
yeah.
And my mum didn't start working the big hours until I was old enough that she could, because the nearest family was 150 miles away. At the closest point we were to them, at one, it was like 1,000 odd miles away because we were in Italy.
I mean, to be fair, that's further than we were. Like, mum's side of the family, because we were halfway across the country for a while up in Ipswich.
Mm-hmm.
And then my parents divorced, and then my mum moved down here to where all of her family is, and now we don't see his side of the family, mainly because he's dead. So, you know, I never really knew him. Met him once when I was 5, you know. Like, there was no sort of, you can't see her or anything else. It was more just, he couldn't be bothered. You know, so we just don't see that side of the family generally. We keep in touch via email. And then this side of the family, we're all very, very close. So when my mum did go to work, she would send me over to my aunt's. And then my aunt would look after me. And then sometimes my cousins would also, not necessarily look over me or anything else, but we used to play video games, you know, but they're all 8 to 10 years older than me. So I was very much like the small child. I was the Todd, to bring it back to Chaos Walking. I was very much like the Todd of everything, only I know what's going on.
Me and Hannah, if Hannah is anything like me, are probably a bit jealous because, like, I'm saying that my nearest family when I lived in England was like 200 miles away-ish, but they also didn't have any children. So then the family that actually had the children that were anywhere near my age, rather than the next youngest person being about 40 years older, were in Essex and I was in Newcastle. I don't want to check how many miles it is, maybe 300. And so I always am very jealous of people who used to be able to go around their grand's house or go around their aunt's house or like see their cousins and like have that familial relationship. I just had my mum and dad, and I'm jealous of that.
To be fair though, my cousins are 8 to 10 years older than me. There's 4 of them, and they're all male, so there wasn't really much of a.
I'm the eldest. I'm the eldest. All my cousins are boys, and I'm not that much older than them. But it was the kind of age gap where growing up, they couldn't have cared less that I was there. Like, I wasn't there to be anything other than a free babysitter. Like, I remember at one point, my mum literally went out with my aunts, and I was left with all 4 boys just in the house. And I was just like, I was like 12 as well. I was like, this is not how I want to spend my time.
My mother would not have let me stay in the house on my own at 12.
Yeah,
my mum would have. I was very.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, this is what I'm saying. Is like we had au pairs, but the au pairs were kind of like until Kieran was old enough to go to nursery. But then when I came home from school, from the age of like, probably from about 10 to 13, just on my own.
I mean, we did have a lot of gang activity in the area, but then when I got older, the head of the gang was scared of my dad, so I was safe by the time I was like 17.
Good.
Like, they did try one time, and then he came up and was like, no, she's cool.
Absolutely not.
She's cool. I was like, I've never been cool in my life, but thank you. My dad.
I mean, I was never cool or anything else to anyone. But
Me either, but he just didn't want my dad to beat him up. But I got home because I was coming home from working retail, and I got home. I was like 17 years old. I was like, thanks for stopping me from getting beat up this evening. And my dad was like, so-and-so is the head of the local gang now. He's scared of you. Oh, that's good then. You can go out at night. I was like, I know. I can leave the house in the evening.
But did you want to leave the house in the evening?
I mean, you know, sometimes you just want to go on an evening walk like Hannah's brother does, and then you remember that you're female.
We were literally, he and I were talking about this the other day. So my parents are in the process of selling their house. So they've moved to basically the middle of nowhere. And Kieran does not enjoy being in the middle of nowhere, but it does make his walks more interesting. And I said, well, the upside is I need to be able to come with you. Like the fact that he's like in this like countryside place.
There's a lot fewer people around. There's a lot less risk.
Less risk, yeah, exactly. The most you've really got to worry about is crossing a road and someone coming down it too fast and not seeing you.
The cows.
Just stay out of their way.
And don't run.
Yeah.
Do not run.
I mean, put it this way, I'm so far in the middle of nowhere that one time, I will say 40 years ago when my mum was young, she just looked out the window once and there was a cow in the back garden. Yeah. In our actual back garden. That's how rural I am.
My grandpa was a farmhand his whole life, so my mum spent until she was like 14, 15 growing up in like a little a little stone shack on the farmer's land. So I grew up like a little city bitch, like suburban bitch rather than city bitch. I grew up as a suburban motherfucker, but my mother grew up in the countryside and she is terrified of all animals. This experience did not help her. Oh, all animals, she's terrified of them. It's a bad time, apart from cats.
should we bring it back to Chaos Walking and talk about how clever it was that all of the different animals had different types of noise?
Yes. Genius. Clever. 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Hannah, I was going to say, actually, thank you for that, because I was thinking of figuring out how to seed this back in again. But what I was going to say was you listened to the audiobook. So how was the noise presented in the audiobook?
Just with one person saying lots of things over each other. So it wasn't, it didn't feel like noise. It felt like one person, like it was almost kind of like layered, but not actually at the same time. I got the impression, like, because I'd had a look, I'd had a look at the idea that, so for that bit, for example, it's not like 1,000 cowards at the same time. It would be coward, 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 coward. Like, yeah.
But then what about bits like this, where the noise is not actually the overwhelming presence of noise, but instead it's just how the dog is talking? How was that portrayed in the audiobook?
Yeah, again, it's just kind of like one after the other. It wasn't, there was no like additional, I can't remember if there were like sounds or if I'm just imagining that. I feel like there may have been like some ambient stuff, but not, it wasn't, it was just a guy reading the story.
Oh, that's a bit disappointing, because they had a chance to really go into it with loads of...
I guess it depends on when the audiobook was produced, though, because that's become more of a thing again in recent years to like create more of an environment in the audiobook, whereas it used to literally just be someone reading it.
Yeah. I was going to say as well, with the noise, I thought it was really clever how Patrick Ness did differentiate between all the different animals and how they thought. So like, going sheep, 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 sheep. I was just like, yeah, that definitely sounds like what sheep would just think all of the time.
Yeah, it's constantly just sheep. Yeah.
Sheep.
I did really like the herd when they're going through, when it just goes here, 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 here. Did anybody else imagine them to be cows?
They were buffaloes, weren't they?
I was imagining cows.
Well, again, to link it back to the whole invasion of North America, I thought it was buffaloes, because also then people were like, oh yeah, they're trying to kill them all because they get in our way, and then they murdered all the buffaloes because they're dicks. Yeah. So I took it to be buffaloes, the same as they have / had in North America.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But it's like, it got me thinking of like, what else? Because does that mean he can also hear the insects as well? Because surely insects would also end up. But then again, they don't mention insects, so they may not have.
I wonder what
that's constant. That's constant, isn't it? Because he talks about how he can hear insects, but not necessarily their noise. But then, is it also to suggest there's a level of sentience for insects? Their brains are so small that their noise is almost negligible.
Yeah, because
be very quiet. It could be like if it was just you and an insect in a sound box, sort of thing. Then maybe you'd hear it.
Because I was thinking, because otherwise, if it was like, no matter how small you are, if there's some level of like living element to it, that would mean like bacteria would have noise and all the rest of it, and that would just be.
And then we get onto the conversation of what is life. And again, as a person with the science degrees, let's not.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Because we will not find an answer.
Yeah. I was going to say, what was there? Anything else that I was going to say about this? I only had one other thing, and that was, how do you all feel about Viola being shot, and now they're in basically Prentice world, and he is President Prentice?
I'm very curious as to how it's going to work. I'm assuming it's going to be like some sort of escape. They'll end up trapped, and then they're going to escape and try and get. This is my assumption for where the plot's going to go. They'll end up trapped for a time. It'll be like mild torture, not like torture, but as in like you're trapped and you're not treated well. Mild torture, and then they'll escape, and they will have to be running around this new world trying to find somewhere else or someone else to help them, while still having Mayor Prentice on their tail. But I'm also curious to see how much on their tail he'll be. Will he just be like, oh, I don't care anymore, we don't need you? Or will he still be really needing Todd?
Because I was going to say as well, with that whole, they're so into getting Todd. Actually, that was one thing I was going to say as well, because I was like, they're so into getting Todd and making him fall and all the rest of it. And I was kind of just going, let it go for the entire book.
But now that they have Haven, they might
Yeah.
let it go, because the whole point was supposed to be to show that Prentisstown could overtake every male mind, and that they could do this to anyone. And so the reason they wanted him was because he was showing the downfall in their plan, and that not everyone would convert. However, now that they have Haven, which is considered essentially the capital, then now that they have this, and now that he's the president of Haven and he has more status than perceived before, he doesn't really need to show that he can overcome Todd in that way, because he's now controlling everyone in a different way. But there's no point in showing his power in that one specific way, because he already has power over all of the citizens of Haven. And so there is a chance that unless there's more to the plot line and there's something else there, like an extra like twist of like a reason why he wants Todd specifically, unless there's another twist for that, I could see him just going, well, I don't care anymore, like, you've escaped. Either I'm getting you back because it looks bad that you've escaped, or I don't care.
But see, men like that, though, I always feel like they're not going to let him go because they like power, you know, and
They do, but Haven had women.
Yeah.
And so there are women and girls that they now control. And so it depends on how much he feels he needs this power over this one boy versus the control he has over the city.
But it is the last boy of Prentisstown, and it's that moment of, maybe I'm overthinking it, but would he be then going, but if he can escape, anybody else can escape, you know? So it's like, we've got
it to make be either one.
Him.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll see which way Ness writes it.
Yeah.
Because it could go either way. It could be, now I have control over this whole big city, which also means I have control over all the other small towns, and now everything is going the way I want it to go, and so I don't care about you because you have nowhere to run, essentially, because every town follows my rule. Or will he go obsessive in the other way and be like, Todd?
That is, I think, because I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to escape. I'm like, there is no escape from this, because they're going to be under probably...
Well, yes, but there is escape, because there's 2 more books.
Yeah, but I am wondering as well if they're going to...
Becca's like, it can't possibly happen. It does.
I know, but it's like, you know how sometimes they do change like protagonists and stuff like this in the middle of like a series?
I can't see that happening with this one. We've not had...
I think they might change perspective. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like Viola's perspective, for example, because I think that makes more sense. If you're going to come up with a cunning plan, don't tell the guy whose thoughts are right there above his head.
And they've established that trust. So if she comes up with this plan, they now have that trust established over the past 500 pages that he will just do what she says if she is confident that he needs to. Yeah. They've established that that works for them. And so she can come up with this plan that he doesn't know about, and she can talk about it with other women in Haven who could potentially help them escape because their thoughts aren't being broadcast.
It feels very similar to the His Dark Materials series. The idea of it being like one perspective, then a second perspective, and then maybe like a dual perspective, especially because the narratives are very similar. Like, we are looking at like original sin, we're looking at the idea of falling, like that religious imagery is very clear in both. So I wouldn't be surprised if the narratives follow a very similar arc.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Becca?
I was just saying that you just quickly froze there. So I was just trying to get it back again. But what I will say as well is that if we do change perspective, I'm really hoping we don't get the perspective of anyone from Prentisstown, because I do not want to be in their brains. You know, I do not want to be in like May Apprentice's like, or Davy Prentice's brain.
I don't want that to be like a POV in the book, but I wouldn't be opposed to it being the occasional, like, out of 50 chapters in the book, because they're quite short chapters, I wouldn't be opposed to like 5 chapters from someone from Prentisstown, like, again, like the president of Prentisstown. I wouldn't be opposed to that myself, because one, again, it's YA, it's aimed for kids, so it's showing the evil more directly, and then 2, it's also a good plot device of being able to see what's happening and how, oh, now people can't go outside after 6 p.m. and showing that way rather than info dumping it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that could be a good way of doing that.
I definitely see what you mean, and I would definitely be okay with if it was only a couple of chapters, but I'm saying not for an entire book.
Yeah, I wouldn't want them as a POV. Yeah.
Yeah, like that would be, quite frankly, hell.
Unless it was one of the younger ones being redeemed.
That I wouldn't mind either. If it was one of the younger ones seeing a different way of doing things and seeing that actually what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, you see it, and like the first chapter, they're very meh. The second chapter, they're meh. And the third chapter, they're like, what am I doing? I'd be down for that.
Yeah, or seeing them gaining. And am I saying you're right? Yeah, that's the one, because I was like, am I saying consciousness? No, that's not the right one. They're already sentient. It's been a long week. But yes, I was saying that, yeah, if they gained a conscience and seeing them slowly unlearn that, like Todd has, that could be quite interesting. But maybe not for an entire book if like like a lot of it is them being Prentice Town men. Put it that way.
We'll have to see. What about you, Hannah? Do you have an opinion on this?
Not outside of like what we've already said, because I think I've said what I need to say really, in the fact that I think where the narrative's gonna go and put like perspectives and stuff. I was not a fan when we were given for Hunger Games like a villain's perspective, for it just to be like I was spurned by my girlfriend and now I want to bring the entire like government down, because that's so real. And I hate that. So I think I'm like, yeah, I like it being the underdog. I like it being the people, but their morals and values align with mine, you know. I think I would struggle with.
I do enjoy, like, I do actively enjoy, like, the occasional interspersed chapter of the evil. I think it's a really good plot-telling device, because it allows you to feel more immersed in the world, whilst also, like, showing, not telling.
Yes. Oh no, that for sure. And I think it's really interesting when their motives are revealed in things. Because like I'm a massive fan of thrillers. And one of my favorite things is when you finally find out who the person is that's doing the terrible things and what their reasons are. And sometimes their reasons are not good. Like that it's tropey and like frustrating. My worry would be that you're in that person's head and you're just like, please. Like, no. And like there's one, I like messy characters. So I like characters that like are trying. I think Todd is a messy character. Like, you know, he's feeling a lot of things. He's dealing with a lot of anger. He's dealing with a lot of betrayal. Like people that he care about, you know, they've kept him at a distance to protect him, but it's isolated him. And now he is struggling to be even further isolated. That's a betrayal. He's a messy character dealing with that. That I really enjoy. I wouldn't mind if we were going to do a Prentice prequel. I wouldn't mind like a Killian and what's his face?
Ben. Isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because the hand up is cause. What do you think about the Ben self-sacrifice?
I was quite sad about it, to be honest, because I kind of wanted him to live, because he felt like not a decent Prentice Town man, because he still went along with what they did, but it was like he had in his head that it was to protect Todd, even if he still did wrong.
Doing bad things for the right reasons, which is always a really interesting take on anything. And like those are my favorite kinds of villains, of like doing bad things but for the right reasons. Like, when you come out from the book being like, oh, and I agree with them, like that's wild. And I think like, yeah, he's creating instances to protect him, and that it's unfortunate.
And it would have been interesting to have him remain, and as the story carries on in the next two books, it would have been interesting to have kind of his point of view of Prentice Town as someone who did not agree with Prentice Town. So rather than seeing it from President Prentice, who thinks that what he's doing is right, being able to see it from a point of view of someone who didn't, but didn't stand up for anything, partly because he was trying to protect a child and partly because he was too scared to.
Welcome back, Emma.
Oh, I forgot I was actually on the screen. I was like, I'm here. No, I'm here. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, we were just talking about the ending and what we think is going to happen next, and if we're going to have any other sort of points of views or anything else.
I just hope something happens in book 2, because like I feel like this was very set up
Yeah, it's just them going from set to set to set, like running through, and like a lot of the conflict is internalized, which is very mature for like a YA, and I didn't mind that. But it was one of those things where like I was sat back and I was thinking, like nothing really happened. Like things happened to him.
Yeah,
he's not instigating anything.
No, like I want some answers. Oh, I'm dropping squashy.
I mean, it's called the ask and the answer, so we might get an answer to something.
I'm dropping squashy, and this is a disaster. Oh well, yeah, like
in these trying times.
But yeah, it's like obviously we got. See, I was gonna say we got the answer to like what makes them a man, but like that I wasn't bothered. Like I know he kind of got told something and we didn't find out. Like it was showing something in his noise, and I was just like, I don't care. I want to know what the noise is. I want to know why the world's like this. I want to know why your years are 13 months, which I was fine with at the start because space revolving around the sun, whatever. But then Viola was confused about it. She was like, why? And I was like, okay, well, if you guys are coming here, you obviously know how many months a year is here or something.
How the planet rotates.
And... I'll be honest, I straight up thought that was just a 1984 reference.
Do I look like I would get a reference?
Well, isn't the first line like the clock struck the 13th hour or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, because like the idea being that they've given it another hour to for reasons.
Mm-hmm. I can't stand up, so bear with me as I struggle to reach this book.
If there is another reason, I'd love to hear it, but I just assumed it was this is a dystopian, bear in mind.
A note on the text, that's not what I want. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13.
There we go. Look at me for remembering things. I've not even read that book.
You should.
I know that because of quiz shows.
It's a good book, and it's quite short.
Apparently, another fun fact about 1984, it is the most statistically lied about book. People will lie and say that they've read it, and they will lie and say it's their favorite book because they think it makes them sound intelligent. They did. I think it was like Stanford Uni did a social study on it, and nearly 80% of the people that said they had read 1984 had not actually read it, which is hilarious to me.
I think it's a good book. I listened to it via audiobook. I would recommend.
I will get to it. I do like a bit of Orwell. I like him traumatizing me.
But yeah, so it could be a reference to that, but at the same time, he has still established that a year is 13 months and that Viola finds that weird. So that is still something that needs to be resolved. Even if it is intended at the start as a reference.
Yeah. I want the next book to last, maybe not last 7 months, but maybe start, I don't know when but I want her ship to arrive, but I feel like we're going to have to wait till book 3 for that. But I would like it to arrive next book.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the book right here. So
what does it say?
It says, apologies right now if I trip over my words. I'm dyslexic. Reading out loud is not my strong point.
I thought that was because I was looking down my phone again. I thought you had already started the synopsis. That started with, sorry if I fumble over my words. I was like, oh, interesting.
You're a divergence rep.
Apologies. It says, fleeing before a relentless army, Todd and Viola once again face their worst enemy, May Apprentice. Immediately imprisoned and separated from Viola, Todd is forced to learn the ways of the Mayor's new order. And then one day, the bombs begin to explode.
Bombs?
Oh my god. We're going to have like a war. Another war.
And then at the bottom it says, tense, shocking, and deeply moving, the ask and the answer is a heart-wrenching exploration of free will and resistance under the most extreme pressure.
Oh, so it should be public reading for everyone currently living in the world that we're in. Cool.
Yes.
Especially America, yes.
Yeah. So, that sounds devastating.
Yeah, can't wait.
I do feel like, as someone who loves dystopian, and as far as I know has always loved dystopian, it's very interesting to be reading dystopian whilst in interesting times.
Yeah,
I've also made the mistake of listening to the Hunger Games. So I've been reading this, listening to the Hunger Games, and living this life.
And seeing the news.
Yeah. And
I do.
And you're like, wait, what's the fiction?
Yeah. I'm like, is this a self-help? Is this like a how-to guide? Like,
the new Hunger Games is out this month as well, so it's.
I'm not caught up, but I started listening to it, and then they announced there's a stage show in London, so I feel like I manifested that.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yeah. Have you seen how they're doing the seating?
Yeah. It's annoying me though that like each section is like District 1, District 2, District 3, and then there's like the two back bits, even though they're not connected, are both called District 11.
I know. I'm like, where is District 12?
Well, see, District 12 will be the stage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point.
It took me a minute too, but like, I'm just like, why not?
Is the play just the first book? Because if not, where is District 13?
Well, see, I said that. I was like, why did they not do District 11, District 13? But I don't know.
It's the first book, if I remember rightly. It's just
the first one.
Okay, then that makes some level of sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I won't lie. With this one, I am quite interested in what they mean by the bombs explode. It's like, who's got bombs?
Wait, what if Viola? I'm going to theorize now. So Viola's shit. Like, obviously, her and her parents were supposed to go down and like then send a message, but they've not sent a message. So what if the people up there are like, they've been attacked, it's a hostile planet, kill them?
Because they'll see there's people and that the ship was destroyed and that no SOS was sent.
So then what if they're like, oh my god, shit's hit the fan, abort, but bomb them all?
Especially if they think it's like an indigenous population. Because obviously they didn't see it the first time around with Todd's ancestors, so there was.
But they do know they're there.
What if Davy and everybody, when they started their army, found the ship, learned how to like send the signal up? Oh, because Viola couldn't do it because it was broken.
Well, in the short story at the end of this one, they actually say that they didn't know. Emma, it was only in certain copies.
I was going to say, I feel cheated.
Yeah. It should be online, though. It's from Viola's point of view, and you see a bit of her life when she was on the ship and then the actual crash. So you also see her parents die, and it is horrific. With this book, everything is horrific, but you actually see that they think that everyone's died on the planet, or that they've just knocked out their signaling has been knocked out. So they don't actually know whether people are alive or dead on the planet.
Wait, hold on. That gives me conflicting thoughts then, because Viola's like, oh, let's have hope that they have something in Haven. But if Haven had communicators, like, why weren't they communicating? And why would they keep them?
But if they don't know, they know that because they set off not too long after each other in the grand scheme of things. And so they knew that more ships would be coming behind them. And so maybe they just kept it alive because, like, we may need to communicate in the future. But the ship isn't within the skyline yet, so they don't know it's coming. So maybe the ship they'll be like, what's that? Communicators.
That's the exact way I think they would go about it.
That would be the exact dialogue. When it is, I'm going to screenshot it and send it.
I should be on the stage, just saying.
I like, honestly.
But yeah, like,
a role for you if you want it.
Also, even if that's why the Haven communicators are still there and everyone knows that they're precious, etc., and they've been maintained and kept, that doesn't mean that anyone now, however many years later it is, knows what the communicators are for.
I got the impression from the way Ben spoke that he came on the ship.
Yeah, I think it's their generation landed.
It's only been about 20 years, I think.
Yeah, it's been about 20 years. So it depends on whether or not they know, like, any of them who survived are actually trained in using the communicators.
But they would have heard, like, probably in the noise how to use it.
Yeah, good point. But I guess at the same time, it's one thing to overhear it and one thing to actually do it.
Yeah.
And then also, it depends on, like you're saying, they would have heard the noise. What if it was a woman or a few women who were trained in it, and then there's no noise, and so then the men can't use it?
But what if they trained the women in it because they didn't want the men to use it because they
didn't know about the noise till they landed, so it would have just been it would have been coincidental that the person on the ship or the people on the ship, depending, who knew how to use it would have been women. That could have happened.
I feel like,
and then they're like, shit, don't tell the men.
I feel like I'm getting really bogged down in these things, and it's just never going to be explained because there's going to be like, irrelevant to the story Patrick Ness is trying to tell. And I'm like, babe, I appreciate you want to talk about this.
Your art is wonderful, but can you please instead answer my questions?
Yeah.
What's going to happen, Emma, is you're going to come out of the next book with more questions.
And I'm going to be pissed about it. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to go into it sooner than later. You know, I could sit here and be like, oh, I'm going to read another book first, and then I'll go on to that. But then it'll end up March like 20th, and I'll be like, shit, I've got to read 500 pages. So I'm going to like start it tonight, probably, finish it next week, because I'll probably fly through it. And then I'll be sitting for like 3 weeks like, I'm raging. Fucking hurry up. Get on it. We need to do the live show now.
I mean,
can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
You've just frozen Abby.
I was going to say, I am more interested in what you were saying, Emma. That look on my face does not care.
Anna's face, so
That's just my face.
I just feel like I'm just like looking dispassionately, like, yeah.
You're like, right, hurry up, come on, whatever.
Hi, wonderful. You want this to happen? Ari, get on with it.
But I keep on going back to who the hell is going to be bombing them? You know, and I'm
Where
just
did you get bombs from? Why bombs?
I mean, we're saying this is a hyper-religious.
What if it's Hildy? I vote it's Hildy. I vote she survived and she's now bombing the shit out of the Prentice
by the
I
way,
hope so.
Emma, I should say, in the movie, if you are going to watch it, Cynthia Erivo plays Hildy.
Oh, I'm in. I'm done.
Interesting choice.
This is the weirdest casting. What do you mean Nick Jonas and Cynthia Erivo are in the
And
same
Matt
film?
Mikkelsen's in it as well.
What sold.
Like, he's playing Mayor Prentice. I'm like, what?
I don't know. Wait. He's playing Nick Jonas's dad.
Yes. In what like Venn diagram could they look like they're part of the same family tree?
I don't know if I want to like watch it right now or if I want to wait until I've read the trilogy. Because you know how sometimes films will borrow different things. Even though it's probably irrelevant, I'm also really not coping with the same look on Abby's frozen face right now.
So funny.
I promise, this isn't me. I can't control it. The camera off, camera on was me trying to reset it.
It's just the more I look at it, the more I'm like, I can't even do it because I'm smiling too much. But you're just like, it's been 84 years. I mean, it goes on like, you know, like you're not like pulling like a mid sentence like face. Oh my god!
I'm just doing this because it feels too offensive.
Me and Becca are like in hysterics, and Hannah's just so unbothered on her phone. Like, yeah, I've got
other things that. Actually, you know what? I will send it. No, sorry, we've got rehearsals tomorrow, and everyone's trying to drop out last minute.
That sounds about right.
It's the first proper one as well. I've planned loads of stuff. No, it's fine. It is what it is.
Oh.
I'm just waiting for Abby to try the camera again and it still be there.
Maybe this will be our sign that we've finished now, because I think we've talked about everything. We've been on for 2 hours. Abby's camera's broken.
Oh, Hannah. Okay. I've just seen the group chat. Oh Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
Back to you, Becca.
So, shall we finish this now and then we'll hope that Abby's camera works next month?
It works the majority of the time, and
it did really well. Like, to be fair, it did really well.
Emma won't know this, but Becca and Hannah will. Is that I'm on my laptop, and my laptop, bless it, was bought for me as a 17th birthday present. As a reminder, I'm 28. So she's doing well. She's doing well.
She's, as always, doing her best.
She lasted almost 2 hours, and we're proud of her.
Yeah. I think she probably got the 2 hours. I think it was just about bang on 2 hours before she went.
I guess, yeah, because we had a pre-live, we were ready to go. So, yeah, she did 2 hours, and I'm proud of her.
Yay for the camera. Right. Shall we wrap up now? So,
We shall.
Next. Don't put it on when I'm about to wrap this up. Oh my god. Right. Anyway, leave that there. We'll come back again to discuss the next book, The Ask and the Answer, with another guest, Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, who I'll also leave a link to down below along with everybody else. And we shall see you, hopefully, maybe at the end of maybe at the
It's the fact that it keeps just popping up that gets me. Okay.
maybe at the end of March or the beginning of April, depending the times. Right. Thanks for joining in. Bye.
Bye. I'm waving a promise.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. So it says it's blanked out, so I'm guessing that means the stream has ended.
No, it's still
It's still going. It's still going down.
It's still going. Why? It's saying an error has occurred. Why? Come on, turn off. Come on, turn off.
Oh God.